The handle is 2 by 1 rectangular tubing, 120 wall. That is 0.12 of an inch thick on the wall, 1/8 of an inch. It fits in your hand just right. The bit is made out of 5160. In this case, it was a leaf spring that I had in the shop, and it was 1 inch too wide. So instead of cutting it off, I decided to forge it down because it was also tapering from too thick to too narrow. And so I could balance the size of the material, reduce the width, and level out the thickness. Worked great. Gave me a chance to use a power hammer. If you could buy a piece of 5160 or some other high carbon steel, medium to high carbon steel in the right cross section, then the only forging you would have to do is a simple bend. You could grind the taper, put the bend in it, cut the nail puller, and install it. The handle is mild steel. This little strap is 3/4 inch mild steel, but the bit has to be able to be hardened. So where we're at now is, this thing's the right size. The bend is perfect. It's been normalized. That means the grain growth inside that carbon steel has been reduced, hopefully. I've forged a taper on there that's very close to the factory taper. I'm going to sharpen it a little bit, grind off the scale. That'll help in the heat treating process. Cut it to length, and then we'll see if we can make this thing hard and temper it. So what's going on right now is the iron molecules are cooling down and snapping back into their lattice structure, and they're trapping the carbide liquids that we're forming, the austenite, martensite, and the others that I don't know anything about. And they're trapping those solidifying carbides in the spaces between the molecules, but it's happening so fast that it doesn't quite fit. And so those solidified carbides are creating tension, pressure, because they don't quite fit where they're being forced to fit. And so it puts a uniform stress throughout the entire piece of steel and makes it hard. Too hard to use as a tool, So then we'll have to temper it back and soften it just enough that it will work like a spring, which is what you want in a lot of tools. I turned the lights off just to get a better sense of how hot it was. It was a medium orange. I'm going to turn the lights back on now and hope to be able to see a nice light gray color underneath the baked on oil. So we've got a pretty good example here of the tempering colors. Right down here is a very faint straw yellow, and there's full straw. In daylight you could see it better. We get up into a bronze up in here, and then the peacock starts to show up, and there's a full royal blue. Those colors correspond to increasing flexibility, ductility, and decreasing hardness. For instance, a light straw or a full straw would be something that you would want maybe in a razor blade. A bronze would be something you would want in a meat cutting knife or a fillet knife. When you start getting up into the purple, now you can start to bone and skin. Full royal blue is the spring temper that you want on a sword. We're going to take this back to a full royal blue as close as we can get most of the way out, because especially down here in the fulcrum and at the bit, it's got to be acting as a spring. It's a little deceptive because the colors can show up at the surface of the piece on a piece this thick without having had the tempering heat get clear to the middle. So you don't want to rush this much. When you're quenching to stop the temper, you don't want to stop in one position because you could get a stress fracture just at the edge of the cold water. You get that blue running down there? You can see the bronze, the yellow, the bronze, the purple, the blue. I gotta slow it up a little bit. As the metal gets thinner, it'll take less heat to temper. Oh, there we go. Full royal blue on the back. Jar this down onto the slab here. One. If you've joined the channel recently, you may not have discovered how much I love Burke Bars. We took the afternoon, it took us, I don't know, what do you think, Nate? We spent maybe 2 or 2.5 hours fooling around with this. I haven't made one of these in 6 years, and so I had to kind of reinvent the moves. You may ask yourself, well, why would you make such an ungainly, what is that anyway? Well, here's what it is. It's much more than just a crowbar. It's much more than just a pry bar. This is an absolutely vital tool if you're a carpenter or a concrete guy, a demolition guy, if you do remodels. If you've got a crew setting tilt-ups, you already know what these are. Burke Manufacturing invented these in the 40s, and now the patent's expired and they're in public domain, and there is nothing like it. You can scrape off the ceiling, you can scrape off the floor, you can pry 8 feet in the air. It's a sledgehammer, you can bend rebar with it. It's everything you need for doing real work, and it's a privilege to be able to make one of these. I mean, I never imagined I would have a shop where I could actually make, from scratch, a Burke bar from a piece of rec tube and a leaf spring. There's one big flaw in this that I decided to leave in here. When I was using that kiss plate under the power hammer to try to regulate the thickness, it kind of got away from me and it bounced over and it embedded itself a little bit in the work, and I forged it out, but it's got a little beauty mark right there. Think of that like a mole on the cheek of a beautiful woman. I'm pretty happy with this. I would be pleased to use it. I would be pleased to own it, but there's somebody that needs it. I don't know if you've discovered Andrew Camerata's channel. That kid's a force of nature. He is not afraid to work. And when I say work, I visualize it spelled all in caps. And I haven't seen one of these in his toolkit, and I'm going to send it to him. And if he doesn't tear it in half, he's going to like it. But he'd have to work pretty hard to tear this thing in half. So Andrew, keep up the good work, man. And for the rest of you, get on Amazon. The link will be in the notes, and buy a Burke bar. If you do anything in the way of construction or demolition, you've just got to have one of these things. Thanks for watching.